Shouldn't you be wearing a mask?
Mask, smask. Smask. Shh. Mask. Schmask. Mask, schmask. That's it. Mask, schmask.
Will our chin diapers keep us safe?
Yes, but we must wear them where the mustache would be. We need to wear them over our mouths and nose.
Are you out of your mind? You expect people to wear a diaper over their nose. That's disgusting. Fuck you, Fauci.
I think it is so funny that people are so mad that Tom Brady wouldn't wear a mask for the Super Bowl. This is epic, you guys. And guess who wins Super Bowl 2021? Oh, that's right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by, Tom Brady.
So when Tom Brady was pictured not wearing a mask when he was hours away from winning another Super Bowl, people got offended. What else is new? One of the tweets that stuck out was this one.
Tom Brady could have used this platform to wear a mask and be a role model for responsible behavior. But no, he had to be a maskhole.
Yes, there are anti-mask Karens, the people that pop up all the time on social media and making a public scene about masks when businesses are reserving their right to require them because they think they're the resistance and they think people are sheep. Look, I agree. Those people are assholes. I love the one where the woman purposely cut a hole in one because, quote, she could breathe better while entering a store and then was caught on camera and then got pissed when footage of her circulated from her being dumb. So yes, I can agree, people who are outright refusing are being assholes. But seriously, Tom Brady wasn't making a scene. He was simply minding his own business in a semi-private setting and not surrounded by a large gathering. And that's enough to trigger people now? So I pretty much see it as,
Oh, gee, what can I be offended about today?
like, you'd think people would understand that these pro sport players are subject to testings constantly because of the risk of contact. So if he's negative and everyone around him is negative, then what's a freaking mask gonna do? Especially if all these athletes are healthy with a great immune system, who are they seriously gonna spread it to? Is the virus magically going to transmit from your computer screen to you? Even in non-contact sports, these testings are so rigorous and common that a player will get pulled from a championship game if the test results arrive during the game and reveal he tested positive. Just ask Justin Turner when the Dodgers won the World Series. Oh, and nobody got sick even though he was allowed to celebrate with his team. Gee, what a shock. The hypocritical thing is that a lot of these keyboard warriors about masks and the people that act all offended if people aren't wearing masks or social distancing are often caught not practicing what they're preaching themselves. They're caught in bars with wall-to-wall people not wearing masks. No, it's not Tom Brady that's a mask hole, it's hypocrites that are mask holes. And on the flip side, there's those who take masks too seriously. I mean, every day when I drive to work in LA, I see people driving alone inside their cars with masks on. Like, seriously, who are you preventing the spread from when you're inside a 2-ton vehicle with barriers surrounding you? There's the people who keep them on outside while they're out walking or exercising when they're alone and nobody's around them and they're minding their own business. And even when they're just outside their own homes, they'll keep them on. Or they'll tell their kids to keep them on when the kids are outside. That is not healthy. You're statistically least likely to get it when out in the open air, so there's hardly any need when there's nobody around you. And the fact that people have gotten fines in certain jurisdictions for not having one on outside is absurd. So yes, people who take masks too seriously are mask holes. And people who are offended by people not wearing masks are mask holes. People being triggered over social media posts making fun of masks. Seriously, just stop. Get some help.
Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
1 month after the Super Bowl, with the big holiday spike going down, we're pretty much back to where we were in October. And with vaccines becoming readily available, it's not surprising that certain governors in some states are saying, all right, let's open back up and lift these mandates. Of course, people like my California governor are bitching, but remember, he's been caught breaking his own rules, as his former aunt by marriage, Nancy Pelosi. And not like just having your mask taken off for a brief moment. I mean full-on rules for thee, not for me, at restaurant parties and hair salons that were technically not supposed to be open.
Gavin Newsom, there's a reason the guy is facing a recall in California, that his policies were too disastrous for the liberal Democratic voters in California because he has shut the state down, he's destroyed jobs, he's hurting kids.
And it's funny how after 2 million have petitioned to recall Newsom, now we're getting news that Disneyland might be allowed to open back up at a limited capacity as early as April Fool's Day? The comedy writes itself. Anyway, look, one may think that I'm totally against wearing masks. No, I'm not. I'm okay with wearing them when they make sense. In a tight building with a small shared space where the risk is high? Sure. In an area where you are mass gathered or you cannot avoid people in a large area? Then yes, keep them on if you need to. Are you around sick people, like at a hospital? Sure. Medical professionals need to wear them all the time anyway. Even before the pandemic, people would wear them if the air quality wasn't great, especially here in California during wildfire season. But again, inside a car alone? Do people who do that sleep with a condom on as well? What if there is a physical barrier between you and another person, like a clear glass shield or a plastic shield? What's the point of needing one then? The particles are magically going to travel through or around this tall barrier? What's the point of a barrier then? It's the same reason why sneeze guards at buffet restaurants exist. At restaurants, whether they let you eat inside or keep you outside, you're required to have them on when you enter or are standing up while waiting for a table. But then once you sit down, then you're allowed to take them off. But as soon as you got to stand up and leave, oh, nope, put it back on. Like seriously, is there a height limit on when air particles travel from breathing and talking? You're suddenly safe when you're below 4 feet above the ground, but you're not safe when you're above 4 feet from the ground? Oh, and what the hell are these? Seriously, if you're a professional musician or on a school band, you've tested negative, but you still play an instrument that requires you to use air from your lungs to make sounds, what's the point of a mask or these monstrosities with holes in them? Good God, man! Oh, and let's not forget that if you're in sports, a lot of people on the sidelines are required to still have them on, while the players don't necessarily need them. Like when kids play the sports. They aren't required, even though that's when you have the most respiratory exchanges between people playing or doing something active. Oh, but the coach standing on the sidelines that isn't doing anything active to risk the spread, they still need to have them on? Why? My problem with them is that they just increase the humidity around my nose and mouth, especially inside ice rinks where I'm required to keep them on while on the ice. Then I start having runny noses. Oh, and if I need to blow my whistle, then I need to pull the mask down with a hand that's already been in a dirty hockey glove. And because of the way sound travels, sometimes I have to pull it down just so a player can hear us. And yeah, they fog up my glasses too, which is why I don't wear my glasses as often as I'd like. So all they do for me is accumulate bacteria and water vapor in my mouth when just letting the air flow normally wouldn't do that. So no, I don't think they're healthy in this situation. Do I think that they help? Maybe a little, but just not enough to prevent, nor not worth shutting down a country for a year. They're definitely not the be-all, end-all. I get it. It's not to prevent you from getting sick. It's to prevent you from giving it to others. I understand, yes, there is science behind the fact that they prevent air particles from entering. I can understand that, but it's still debatable on how many cases they've actually prevented. And that's why a lot of people are having issues with these mandates and social distancing rules. People aren't against them because, darn, my freedom darn taken away. It's because people still get the virus while being compliant. That big spike from November to January pretty much proved you were going to get it no matter what you did. I know those rules are supposed to reduce the risk, but plenty of people still got sick no matter how compliant they were. There was a period where half the team I was coaching got grounded due to COVID because of exposures and cases of their families getting sick. Some of these families didn't travel with us to Phoenix when we did the Thanksgiving tournament. They stayed home and they still got it. So you either stay home, you still get it, or you go and you still get it. Didn't seem to matter.
With that in mind, I'm curious what advice you have for the good people of Texas and the good people of Mississippi who maybe be given some bad information right now by the leaders of their state.
You know, my strong advice to them, Joe, would be to actually continue to implement the public health measures. Now is not the time to pull back. The good news is that we have vaccines coming online. You saw the curve of the infections per day coming down, but over the last 7 days or so, we've reached a bit of a plateau where the deflection of the curve isn't going straight down the way it was. That's a bad sign.
Yes, was the big spike caused by people partying, congregating, and visiting for the holidays? Sure. But while you had people finger-waving and pointing all the people breaking the rules, the same people telling you to follow these rules were out vacationing in Hawaii at the same time. Plus, let's not forget that throughout this pandemic, you've had states on complete opposite ends on how they've handled it. Take Florida and California, for example. California being among the strictest, while Florida has been among the looser states for the most part. California requires and mandates masks. Florida merely recommends them but doesn't require them on a government level. And yet both of them have had the same amount of cases and death percentages when you account for their population. So when you look at it that way, it doesn't seem to matter what measures were taken. And one would think with less restrictions that Florida would be filled to the brim with retirees in the high-risk age group succumbing to the virus. But no, Florida's been business as usual. I mean, even Disney World in Orlando has been open while all the tourist destinations in LA and San Diego have pretty much been closed since March. Sure, Disney World's open at a limited capacity and through reservations, but they found a way for people to do business there. Meanwhile, LA keeps crying budget crisis. No, I never thought that the pandemic or the virus is a joke. My parents had it, and they were miserable when they actually got sick. And them being in their 70s, they were super close to being too weak to drive themselves to the ER. And because I was directly exposed, I ended up getting it too. Only I ended up with a mild cold at the most. And if there wasn't a global pandemic going on, you would have thought I had allergies or just a typical cold. Maybe I'm lucky because I know there were adults my age who got it full on and were miserable, but I'm also somebody who doesn't get sick that easily. I was fortunate, and when I was grounded for 3 weeks with the virus showing up in my test, at least my job offered me COVID leave with pay, so I got paid my usual hours to stay home. But other people don't have those perks, so that's where I am sympathetic and say, we can't keep doing this. Let's get back to business.
A little bit nervous about is they mentioned that the total, taking off the total masks. I have a portion of my customers that love what we're doing over here. We have all of our tables spread apart at a certain distance, which makes them feel comfortable, and everyone likes the idea that we require people to wear masks.
I'm excited, but then it's kind of like a shocker. You know, like we just heard about the totals of how many people have died in the U.S. I do kind of feel like it might be a little bit soon, but I guess we just have to see how it goes.
People complaining that some states are not making them mandatory or not enforcing them anymore are forgetting that just because the government isn't enforcing it doesn't mean businesses don't have a right to require them. And if your state or government lifts the mandates, nobody's forcing you to go outside. Nobody is forcing you to take it off if you feel unsafe. If you are so afraid of catching this virus that you have a small percentage chance of even getting anyway, and thus you don't want to leave your home because you can work from home and you can get all your stuff delivered to you and you don't have to go anywhere, that's your freedom to do so. If a business wants to keep their signs up and require masks for entry, much like they reserve the right to require shirts and shoes for service, and reserve the right to refuse service if people don't comply, that's their choice. Now, if it's a place I want to or sometimes need to do business with, then by golly, I'll follow their rules. It's not the end of the world. And if I have the choice between a place that doesn't require them versus a place that does, where do you think I'll go? And I'm sure there's those who would pick the opposite because that's where they feel safer, and there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that certain governments are finally trusting their citizens to make the right call and do what they feel is right, it's a good thing. Government officials should be going after people who are harming women and children. They should be going after people who are stealing, robbing, murdering, and sex trafficking. They shouldn't be spending their resources penalizing people for not wearing a fucking mask. And if a business requires it, you don't need to act like an entitled Karen over it. Just go to a place that doesn't require it. You don't need to go act like a bitch and make a scene and then become infamous on social media. We've been doing this shit for a year. So yes, I'm on the side of things getting open back up. If the cases do spike back up with the states that have lifted the mandates, then there is grounds for them to restrict back up until the vaccines ultimately do the job. And if my job requires me to get vaccinated, then I'll get vaccinated. It's not because I'm being a sheep, it's because I want my work to open back up to the public and be comfortable doing so, and for visitors to be comforted in knowing that they're safe. If it doesn't make things get back to normal, in other words, if everybody takes the vaccine and they still keep these stupid mandates up, then yes, there's huge grounds for people to be pissed off at the government at that point. I'm Desert Coyote 22. Thanks for listening.